Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract wealth almost effortlessly, while others struggle their entire lives no matter how hard they work? Imagine two individuals starting with the same resources, the same opportunities, even the same intelligence. Yet their paths diverge completely. One accumulates influence and prosperity, the other stays trapped in endless survival mode. What is really happening beneath the surface? The truth is, wealth is not simply about money. It begins long before the first coin is earned. It starts in the way your mind is trained to see the world, to recognize opportunities, and to make decisions that others ignore. This is not just motivational talk, it is strategy, the kind that Niccolo Machiavelli himself might have whispered into the ear of a prince. Wealth, in this deeper sense, is less about the bank account and more about the internal architecture of thought. Think about the moments in your own life when someone else saw potential where you saw nothing. Maybe it was a friend who invested in a small idea and turned it into something bigger, while you dismissed it. Maybe it was a colleague who negotiated fearlessly for a salary increase, while you remained silent, convincing yourself it was not the right time. These small differences, repeated across a lifetime, shape entirely different destinies. But here is the unsettling question. Has your mind already been programmed for scarcity without you realizing it? Have you unknowingly inherited beliefs and habits that make wealth almost impossible? Not because of external limits, but because of the way you have been trained to interpret reality. If this makes you uncomfortable, good. Because in the next few minutes we are going to explore the hidden signs that reveal whether your mind is already aligned with wealth, or if it is quietly sabotaging you. And as we bring Machiavelli into the conversation, you will discover that wealth is not about luck or privilege. It is about strategy, foresight, and above all, the courage to think differently from the crowd. So stay with me. By the end of this journey, you will see money and, more importantly, yourself in a radically new light. And before we move forward, let me ask you, do you recognize moments in your own life where your thinking, more than your circumstances, defined the outcome? Share one of those moments in the comments and let's begin this exploration together. What if wealth was not something you chased, but something that naturally gravitated toward you because of the way you think, decide, and act? Imagine walking into a room and seeing opportunities where others only see risks. Picture yourself negotiating with quiet confidence, not because you are lucky, but because your mind has already rehearsed every outcome. Now let's stretch this vision even further. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a mindset so aligned with wealth that even ordinary events, an unexpected conversation, a small inconvenience, a minor setback, could be transformed into stepping stones. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you would ask, "How can I use this?" And in that shift, you would notice doors opening that had always been invisible. This is not a fantasy. History shows us countless figures who turned apparent disadvantages into foundations for power and prosperity. Think of the merchants of Renaissance Florence, men who began with modest means yet rose to control entire markets and even influence governments. Their advantage was not only their trade, it was their vision, their ability to imagine possibility where others saw impossibility. But here's the catch. Most of us cannot even imagine ourselves thinking like this. Our imagination has been colonized by scarcity. We picture wealth as distant, belonging to someone else, someone smarter, luckier, more connected. And because our imagination is restricted, our actions follow that script. So let me ask you, what would change in your life if you allowed yourself to imagine wealth not as something external, but as an extension of your character? How would your decisions shift if you believed, even for a moment, that your mind was capable of generating prosperity through clarity and courage? This exercise in imagination is not just wishful thinking. It is the rehearsal ground for reality. As psychologists have shown, the brain does not completely distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and lived ones, which means that every time you rehearse scarcity, you strengthen its grip. And every time you rehearse abundance, you prepare yourself for opportunities that others will overlook. So take this moment to visualize. What would your life look like if your mind was already programmed for wealth? Not 10 years from now, but today. What small decision would you approach differently? What risk would you finally dare to take? Hold that image because it will become the foundation for everything we explore next. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people believe that wealth is primarily the result of external conditions, family background, education, the economy, or pure luck. But if that were entirely true, history would not be filled with men and women who rose from obscurity to power. The deeper reality is this: wealth is rarely created outside before it is first created inside. Think of it this way: two people can receive the exact same salary, yet one uses it to build, invest, and expand possibilities, while the other spends it on short-term comfort and remains stuck. The difference is not in the amount earned. It is in the mindset guiding the choices. This means that poverty, more often than we like to admit, is not just a condition, but a pattern of thought. This is the rupture. Your financial destiny is less determined by the system than by your interpretation of it. That does not mean external forces are irrelevant. They are powerful. But the decisive factor is how your mind responds to those forces. Do you surrender to them or do you strategize within them? Machiavelli in The Prince warned rulers never to rely solely on fortune. Fortune, he said, is like a raging river, destructive when uncontrolled but manageable if one builds dikes and channels. In the same way, external events will always be unpredictable, but the disciplined mind can prepare, adapt, and even benefit from them. Here is what no one tells you. Many people unconsciously train themselves to stay poor, not because they want to, but because they constantly choose safety over strategy, comfort over courage. They look at wealth as something almost immoral or unattainable, and in doing so they reinforce the very barriers that keep them from it. So ask yourself, how many of your financial choices are made not out of vision, but out of fear? How often do you cling to what feels safe, even when that safety slowly erodes your potential? The insight that disrupts the normal narrative is this: wealth begins not with having more, but with thinking differently. Until you question the patterns of scarcity in your own mind, no amount of external opportunity will be enough. The key to transformation is not waiting for better circumstances. It is programming your thoughts to see what others refuse to see. And once you grasp this, the world itself begins to look different. You stop asking, "Why am I not rich yet?" and begin asking, "What mental patterns am I still serving that keep me from wealth?" That single shift is where true freedom begins. Niccolò Machiavelli, writing in the early 16th century, observed human nature with a clarity that remains uncomfortable even today. He argued that fortune is fickle, favoring those who dare to act decisively, rather than those who wait passively. In his words, fortune is like a woman. She rewards boldness and punishes hesitation. While the metaphor reflects his time, the truth it conveys is timeless. Opportunity bends toward those who are mentally prepared to seize it. But Machiavelli was not alone in this. Centuries later, the psychologist William James, often called the father of modern psychology, declared, "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes of mind." The echo between Machiavelli and James is striking. Both insist that reality is not merely endured, but actively shaped by the way one thinks. Consider also the Stoic philosophers, men like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. They lived under conditions far more unpredictable and harsh than our own, yet they taught that the mind is the one domain where true freedom and power begin. Wealth, for them, was never merely external. It was the result of inner mastery. The external often followed naturally from that foundation. When we weave these voices together, Machiavelli's political realism, James's psychological insight, and Stoic discipline, a consistent picture emerges. Wealth, influence, power, all of these flow first from a structured, resilient mind. Not from luck, not from privilege, but from an intentional shaping of perception and habit. The mistake many make is to dismiss these teachings as outdated or irrelevant, imagining that our modern economy operates on entirely different principles. But think of entrepreneurs today who transform crises into opportunities, or leaders who see possibility where others only see collapse. Their wealth, just like the merchants of Florence or the emperors of Rome, is a reflection of their mental programming. So the question you must face is this: which voices are shaping your inner world? Are you unconsciously following the script of scarcity handed down by family, culture, or fear? Or are you aligning yourself with the timeless wisdom of those who understood that fortune bends only to disciplined, courageous minds? Because if thinkers across centuries agree on one point, it is this: the external world may change, but the power of the mind to shape destiny remains constant. The real battleground of wealth is and always has been inside your head. Most people assume they are making rational choices about money, career, and opportunity. But beneath those visible decisions, there are invisible dynamics, mental habits so ingrained that they silently sabotage every attempt to move forward. You do not see them, yet they guide you like strings on a puppet. For example, there is the pattern of postponement. How often have you told yourself, "I will start saving when I earn more," or "I will invest when things feel safer"? This logic seems harmless, even prudent, but it hides a deeper script: the belief that wealth begins later, never now. And because later never arrives, your mind becomes conditioned to perpetually delay the very actions that create prosperity. Another invisible dynamic is resentment toward wealth itself. Many grew up hearing phrases like, "Money is the root of all evil," or "the rich are greedy." Without realizing it, they internalize the idea that to pursue wealth is to become corrupt. The result? Every time they take steps toward financial growth, guilt quietly sabotages progress. They may not admit it, but part of them resists prosperity because it conflicts with the moral programming they inherited. There is also the dynamic of comparison. In the age of social media, you are constantly bombarded with images of others' success. Instead of fueling ambition, this often creates paralysis. You measure your beginning against someone else's highlight reel and conclude, "I could never get there." The tragedy is that this very comparison blinds you to the small strategic steps that could build real wealth in your own life. These invisible forces are not simply bad habits, they are psychological traps. They keep you locked in scarcity, even when opportunities stand right in front of you. Machiavelli would call this a failure of perception, being unable to read reality correctly, and therefore doomed to be ruled by it rather than master it. So pause and reflect. Which of these dynamics quietly controls your life? Do you delay action, waiting for a mythical, perfect moment? Do you secretly believe wealth is immoral? Do you paralyze yourself through comparison? Recognizing these invisible patterns is the first act of rebellion against them, because until you expose the hidden scripts, you will keep repeating them. And only when they are brought into the light can your mind be reprogrammed for something greater, something that wealth in its fullest sense was always meant to express: freedom, influence, and the power to build. Wealth is not an accident. It is a mindset rehearsed long before it becomes a reality. Scarcity is not the lack of money, it is the lack of vision. You are not poor because of what you earn. You are poor because of how you interpret what you earn. Money follows clarity. Confusion repels it. Every excuse you make about why you cannot grow is a quiet decision to stay small. The wealthy are not fearless. They simply refuse to let fear be the final voice in their decisions. Fortune does not reward hesitation. It rewards bold, calculated moves. Your bank account is a reflection of your mental account, the habits, beliefs, and choices you make daily. Blaming the system gives you comfort. Questioning yourself gives you power. Wealth is not found in chasing money. It is found in building the character that money chases. These are not motivational slogans. They are weapons. Each one is meant to cut through the fog of excuses and illusions that hold you back. Think of them as mental armor, sharp enough to challenge every instinct of passivity and every whisper of resignation. The reason these short truths matter is simple. The human mind is shaped more by repetition than by knowledge. You may understand complex theories of economics or psychology, but what really directs your behavior are the phrases and thoughts you repeat daily, consciously or not. If you rehearse scarcity, you live scarcity. If you rehearse boldness, you live opportunity. So here is the challenge. Pick one of these sentences and repeat it throughout your day. Write it down. Say it aloud. Confront yourself with it when you hesitate. This is how reprogramming begins. Not in grand gestures, but in small, repeated acts of mental resistance against the old script. Because at the end of the day, the most dangerous lie is not the one society tells you. It is the one you keep telling yourself over and over until it feels like truth. Break that cycle. And you will not just think differently, you will live differently. Here is a paradox most people overlook. Wealth requires both caution and boldness. If you lean only toward caution, you become paralyzed, always waiting, never acting. If you lean only toward boldness, you become reckless, always moving, but often in self-destruction. The mind programmed for wealth learns to unite these opposites: boldness in vision, caution in execution. Machiavelli himself wrote about this tension. He argued that a ruler must be both the lion and the fox to display strength, the fox to detect traps. The wealthy thinker lives by the same principle. Strength without strategy becomes arrogance. Strategy without strength becomes cowardice. True prosperity demands both. Another paradox. Wealth is both selfish and unselfish. On one hand, you must be radically responsible for your own growth, refusing to wait for rescue or permission. On the other hand, true wealth expands only when it serves beyond the self, when it creates value, opportunity, and stability for others. If you chase money only for yourself, it slips away. If you use money as a tool to build and contribute, it multiplies. And here is a subtler paradox. Wealth requires discipline in the present, but imagination for the future. If you obsess over the future, you neglect the daily habits that create it. If you obsess only on the present, you miss the greater vision guiding your steps. To live in wealth is to stand with one foot in discipline and the other in imagination, anchored but never confined. These paradoxes may sound contradictory, but they are in fact the hidden logic of prosperity. The poor mind seeks simplicity. Just tell me the one rule to follow. The wealthy mind embraces complexity, holding tension between opposites without collapsing into either extreme. So ask yourself, do you lean too far into safety or too far into risk? Do you hoard wealth for yourself, or do you neglect yourself entirely while serving others? Do you live only for today or only for tomorrow? The paradox is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to free you. Because once you accept that wealth requires duality, you stop searching for perfect formulas and start building character strong enough to hold both sides of the truth. And that strength, paradoxically, is the one thing that never loses value. If you begin to reprogram your mind for wealth, something profound happens, not just in your bank account, but in the way you carry yourself in life. The reward is not only financial gain, though that often follows. The deeper reward is freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time. Freedom to say no when others feel forced to say yes. Freedom to direct your energy toward what actually matters. Imagine the relief of no longer living in reaction, always scrambling, always worried. Instead, picture yourself with a clear plan, where even setbacks are not threats, but signals guiding you to adjust. That stability does not come from luck. It comes from the disciplined mind trained to see opportunity and resist panic. Another reward is dignity. Poverty, more than anything, strips people of their sense of worth. But when your mind is aligned with wealth, every small victory reinforces the truth that you are capable of shaping your own destiny. You stop apologizing for your ambitions. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You begin to stand taller, not out of arrogance, but out of grounded confidence. There is also the reward of influence. Money alone does not make you powerful, but the mindset that generates money often generates respect as well. People listen to the one who sees clearly when others are blinded by fear. They trust the one who acts decisively when others hesitate. Wealth, in this sense, is not just about accumulation. It is about the authority that comes with disciplined vision. And perhaps the most unexpected reward is peace. While many imagine wealth as a frantic pursuit of more, the truth is that once the mind is truly programmed for prosperity, it no longer chases, it attracts. The wealthy mindset is not restless but composed. It knows when to act and when to wait. It knows that value flows toward those who create value. So let me ask you, what is the personal reward you long for most? Is it freedom, dignity, influence, or peace? Maybe all of them. The good news is that they do not require waiting for millions in the bank. They begin with the reprogramming of your mind, and they manifest in small, concrete shifts you can experience right now. The promise is simple but powerful. Change your inner script and you will not only see money differently, you will see yourself differently. And that shift is the greatest wealth of all. To tie all of this together, let us build a conceptual map that explains why the programming of the mind is the decisive factor in wealth. We can think of it as three interconnected layers: perception, decision, and action. Each layer reinforces the others, creating either a cycle of scarcity or a cycle of prosperity. The first layer is perception. This is how you interpret reality. Two people may look at the same situation, say, a market crash or a sudden layoff, and one sees disaster while the other sees opportunity. The difference is not in the event itself, but in the lens through which it is viewed. Machiavelli warned that leaders must read the times with clarity, or else they would be ruled by fortune instead of mastering it. Wealth begins here, in the disciplined act of perceiving correctly. The second layer is decision. Once perception is shaped, choices follow. The scarcity mindset decides based on fear. It clings, delays, and rationalizes. The wealth mindset decides based on vision. It calculates, adapts, and dares. William James emphasized that our attitudes of mind shape our reality, and this is nowhere more visible than in the quality of our decisions. Every choice you make is a vote for the type of future you are programming. The third layer is action. Decisions alone mean nothing if they are not carried out consistently. Here the Stoics offer wisdom. Discipline is the bridge between thought and reality. Small, repeated actions accumulate into massive change over time. This is where theory becomes flesh, where the invisible script becomes visible wealth. Now notice how these layers interact. If perception is clouded, decisions will be weak, and actions will scatter. But if perception is clear, decisions grow bold, and actions gain coherence. Over time, this cycle builds momentum, creating wealth not as a sudden miracle, but as a predictable outcome. This framework is not abstract. It applies to every part of your life. In relationships, in career, in health, the same cycle is at work. The mind you program for wealth is also the mind you program for character, influence, and legacy. So when you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, at which layer is your cycle breaking? Do you struggle to see opportunities, to decide with courage, or to act with discipline? Identifying this weak point is the key to rebuilding your structure. Because when perception, decision, and action align, fortune itself begins to bend in your favor. We have traveled far, from Machiavelli's sharp realism to the invisible patterns that quietly shape your life. And if there is one truth that should remain with you, it is this: wealth begins not in numbers, not in luck, not even in circumstances. It begins in the structure of your mind. Think about it. Every opportunity you missed, every risk you avoided, every victory you won, they all began in a thought, a decision, a way of perceiving reality. Your life today is the harvest of your past mental programming, and your life tomorrow will be the harvest of the programming you choose to cultivate now. So I ask you, what kind of future do you want to plant? One ruled by hesitation, fear, and excuses? Or one built on clarity, discipline, and boldness? Machiavelli reminds us that fortune rewards those who dare. James reminds us that attitudes shape destiny. The Stoics remind us that discipline transforms theory into freedom. These voices across time are not distant. They are speaking directly to you. Do not leave this reflection as mere theory. Choose one small action today that reflects the wealthy mindset. It could be as simple as starting a savings plan, asking for what you are worth, or confronting a fear you have avoided. The size does not matter. The shift in identity does. Because each act is a declaration. I am no longer ruled by scarcity. I am programming myself for wealth. And now I want to hear from you. In the comments, write down the one invisible pattern you recognized in yourself while watching this. Was it postponement, comparison, fear disguised as prudence? Naming it is the first step in breaking it. And when you share, you not only commit to change, you help others see themselves more clearly too. If this journey gave you insight, do not keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you know who needs this perspective. Because wealth of the mind grows stronger when it is shared. Remember, true wealth is not about having more, it is about becoming more. And when you align your mind with that truth, money and influence become not just goals, but consequences. The kind of consequences that change not only your life, but the lives of those around you.